We're going to build a full CRUD application today. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that in the 2 hours that we have. And I have a little bit, already have like a domain that I'm going to use because I created a couple of styles so it won't be so boring. So we'll do like a little game application where you can add new games. And then we'll probably keep working on that tomorrow when we talk about associations between different models. Before we get started, anybody have any questions? All right, let's dive right in. Cool. So I'm probably gonna ask you throughout, like, you know, how I do certain things, and I hope that you can tell me. And some of these are repetitive, I know, but it's good to, you know, do things over and over again and internalize them. So we're going to start from scratch. We're going to create a new Rails application. Someone help me out creating a new Rails application.
Ruby, no.
Rails?
Yeah, Rails, no.
Awesome. We'll call this Gamify, because that's the best name I could come up with. All right, let's let that run. We're pretty much just going to be coding today. So we're just going to be building out that application, and we'll talk about, you know, what's going on while we build it out. But there is no README that I have, so it's going to be just code. All right, let's let that run. And then can someone tell me like what I might be doing next after I create this new Rails application?
Create your models and controllers.
Exactly. Perfect. All right, so let's move into this, and I'm gonna open this up. By the way, the code-r and then the period will open up the folder that you are currently in the terminal, in the same window that you're in the same VS Code window. So if I do this, it's going to replace whatever I had previously and open it up. That's the -r. All right, so Brad mentioned we need some models, we need some controllers. If I want to use a generator, what would that look like to create a new model?
Rails G model.
Perfect. And then I happen to already have done this at some point. So Rails G model for our game, right? Our game's going to have games are going to have titles, a description, and an image URL. I'm going to omit the tests here, and let's run this.
Question.
Yeah.
If you do title description text, does it make, or is the default string when you do a generate
String.
model? Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't specify anything, it always creates a string.
Yeah, exactly. So text, let me see, where are migrations? Text is just like a longer, it just like gives you the ability to add like a longer piece of string. A string would probably work here also, but for like a description, if it's you know longer, it might make more sense to have it be text. I don't know exactly like what or if there's like a character limit for string. It's just, I would say it's just like good practice. Cool. All right, so we got our model. So with the model generator, we created the model and the migration, right? How do I create a new controller?
Same thing, but
Rails G and then
controller.
games controller. Yeah, games controller.
Or controller games.
Controller and then games, and then I'm also
yeah.
gonna omit the tests here. So it's always Rails generate and then whatever generator you want to use, model, controller, migration, and then the name of the model or.
Is it only the controller that has the no framework?
No, they all do. So I used that
Okay.
earlier also with our model.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
So,
controllers, it would be, or the name is going to be plural for controllers, singular for models.
Yes, let me actually bring up, I wanted to give this to you. I think this is also in one of the labs. See if I can find that again. I had it yesterday, but I don't know why I didn't keep it. Okay, so I'm gonna just replace the README here. And these should be the right, like, pluralizations. So if we have a model that's going to be singular, and it's going to be in Pascal case, so Pascal case is always uppercase, lowercase, uppercase, lowercase. Then we have our table that's going to be plural and in snake case, so with an underscore, all lowercase. And then we have our controller, which will be plural and again in Pascal case. And then if we have some kind of foreign key in our database, that would be singular. I don't know if I forgot anything here, but those are, they're good to keep in mind. I would also always recommend, if you're not sure, like, look at the Rails docs. Like if we look at like Rails generate controller, we can probably find the exact syntax here. So Rails generate controller, and then it says name. So here's an example: Rails generate controller credit cards. You have it plural here. So look at the documentation. It's there to help you out, right? So don't be afraid to look this kind of stuff up. Okay, we have our model, we have our controller, we have also we have our views folder, right? Our controller generator creates the views folder. If we want to check that out, that is right here, it's empty. And at this point, we have to make sure that, what do we have to do before we start a Rails server?
Migrate.
Migrate, perfect. Rails DB, migrate. And I happen to have some seeds also, so we don't have to write this all out. So let me go to the seeds file, paste in some seeds here. And how do I seed my database?
Rails seeds, Rails DB seeds.
Rails DB seed.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so from here, I would like to start my server. And just to see if I am on Rails, let's go to localhost 3000. And it looks like this all worked out just perfectly. Perfect. Awesome. Obviously, we're not able to like see any of our games yet. We're not able to create anything yet, but we'll work that out. If I want to go to /games, what do I need to do in order to like set that up?
Create the route.
Create the route. Perfect. Let's go to our routes file. We know that we're going to build a full CRUD application, so I'm going to go ahead and use the resources macro here for all of our games, and that will create all of the routes for us. If we refresh the page, we can see that our index actually could not be found in the games controller. Again, we can kind of follow the errors here and build our application out like that. I guess you really don't have to restart the server anymore whenever you change your routes. I remember that you used to have to do that. Yeah.
What is it referring to when it says index?
So remember that, so our resources, let's go to, XYZ or something like that. Remember that our routes, that this resources macro creates all of the routes for us, right? All of the games routes. So we have a route for all of our games. We have a route for a new game, for edit game, for a single game. If we are going to /games, right, which is what we just did, Rails is going to find this kind of get route right here, and it's going to try to find a controller called games and an action called index. This is where that index is coming from. If we were to go to, localhost /games, oops. this will tell us like index could not be found in the controller. We do not have an action called index. If we go to /new, it's going to tell us new could not be found in our controller. So that always comes from whatever we specify as the action for that particular route.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. And it's not super obvious here because we're using the resources generator. If we were writing this out more manually, like, you know, get /games and so on, it might be a little bit more obvious, like what kind of actions and controllers we're hitting. All right, cool. So if we want to go to /games, we don't have the action in our controller yet. So let's go ahead and add that. Again, I'm using a Command P here to navigate through my files because it can be a little tedious sometimes with Rails because there's so many files. So I'll create my index right here. And if I refresh the page, I should get a new error, which is telling me that my template is missing. How do I fix this error?
You have to create a view for your
Yes.
index.
Important that I create this view inside of the games folder, right? This is all specific to this particular game. Tomorrow we're going to talk about associations. And once we talk about that, we're going to add more models. So let's say we have like a review model. Imagine if we had another, let me create this index first. HTML.erb. Imagine we had another like review model. If we had all of our view files directly in the root views folder, we wouldn't be able to distinguish the index.html.erb for games from the index.html.erb for reviews. Right? That is why we separate this out into separate folders, because our view files are going to be named exactly the same. Okay, so let's add like an H1. And hopefully we get something on our page. Cool. All right, that looks good. So let's go ahead and let's print out all the games. This is what we did yesterday already. How would I go about going through all of my games and, you know, showing them on the page? What are the steps that I need to take?
Iterate over them using each.
Okay, so in my HTML index.html.erb.
Yeah.
What tags do I need to use here in order to be able to use Ruby?
The ERB tags and
And the equal sign on it.
Yeah, with the equal sign.
Do I need an equal sign here if when I iterate?
Not for the iterate, but for the content inside of it.
Exactly. So I'm probably going to have games. We'll iterate over those. I'll get one game. And I'm just going to make sure that I end this here. Okay, and then within, I want to print out a single game. Let's just start with the title. I believe a game has a title. And we are getting an error. How come I'm getting this error here? What's this telling me? This is a common error that you might get. Undefined method each for nil class. What does that error tell us?
You need to create the method for this.
Does add game exist in the
It does not.
controller?
Inside of the controller, you need to create the method for this one.
Yeah, so we already have the index action. What we have to create is the instance variable at games, right? We haven't created that yet. So this is a common error that you might get. It's telling you like undefined method something for nil class, which means that this each that we're trying to call on whatever is in front of the dot, whatever is in front of the dot does not exist. We cannot find it, right? So whenever you get this error, you can find this like, you know, whatever this method is, it could be like a map or whatever else. If it says for nil class, that means whatever is in front of the dot could not be found, it doesn't exist. So you are all correct. We have to create, let me close some of this. We have to create our @games variable here in our controller. And where do I get my games from?
Games.all.
Oh,
Games.all?
without this.
Yeah, without the S.
Without the S.
Exactly, singular game.all. Perfect. Awesome. These are all my games. Obviously, I can format them a little nicer. I mentioned earlier that I have some styles that I created previously, and I'm actually going to grab a little bit of a different format here for our index. We can go through this, but it's nothing too crazy from like what we've done previously. So we are still iterating over our games. I just added a couple of divs around here. We're iterating over our games here. For each game, we're creating a div so that I can have a better, easier way of styling that. And then we have, each one of our games has an image URL. If we want to add an image tag, we can replace the source attribute with whatever is coming back from the game, right? So we can say game.image URL and replace the source attribute, which will hopefully show the game on the page, right? And then for our description, it's pretty straightforward. We're just getting the game.description. And then I added something else in here, which is a link. I think you've all worked with link to before. Link to, the first argument will be your, like the text that's going to be inside of the link. So game.title, right? And then where do we want to link this to? And this is kind of a shortcut. I'm pretty sure that you've done this before. Game path in the game, or game.id or something like that. This is all possible. Like this is all legit if you want to write it this way. The shortcut here would be to just kind of pass in the game instance itself. This will still get you to the right place whenever you click on the link. Questions here about the code that
The
I
styling would most likely not be left to us as developers to decide. So we'd be given specs on what it should be in the industry.
It depends. Depends on the company, and also depends on I guess depends a little bit on you. Sometimes what you might get is like a design that a designer will create. You still have to write the actual styling, like the CSS for it, but you might have someone give you like a like a printout. This is what the page should look like. Turn that into code essentially.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
But again, it kind of depends on the company that you're working for, how large it is. If you work at a large company, they're going to have designers. If you work at a startup, you might have to do a little bit more work.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna find my CSS files here, and I'm gonna put some CSS in here that I already wrote. Feel free to check that out afterward. We're not gonna go into this right now too much. And then let's turn this into an SCSS file. And then let's put some more styling in here. All right, let's see what that looks like.
Whoa.
Cool. So we are
Wow.
getting there. One more thing that I wanted to add. If I wanted to have some kind of navigation bar, so say I want to be able to navigate to all of my games, or like creating a new game, or whatever or the homepage. Where would I put this navigation bar in my code?
Could you just put it at the top of your index?
Yeah, that's a
below
great guess.
the H1.
You can do it inside layouts. In
Yes, very nice. So a navigation bar, as well as maybe like a footer, These are all things that you might want to have on every single one of your pages, right? So not just on the index page, but also on the show page and all the other pages. With Rails, we get something called the layouts file. The layouts file or a folder contains different types of layouts. We're not going to worry about these mailer layouts too much, but this application.html.erb is important to us because this contains the layout for our entire application, everything that the user sees. You can see this line 13 here that says yield, right? This means that for every time that we visit a page, if we visit the index page, if we visit the show page, everything that we have inside of this layouts file is going to like wrap our page. So it's gonna take the content that we have in our index.html.erb, and it's essentially going to take this content and replace this yield line with that content. Right? We're not actually literally doing that, but that's what Rails is doing in the background. So wherever you have this yield right here, that's going to be the content of each one of your view files.
Views.
So this is where we might want to put like a navigation.
Is that a head? Is that the title under the head? Is that the title for the tab?
This right here?
Yep, gamify.
Yeah, so that's for this, what you see up here.
Can you repeat what the yield is doing?
Yeah, so the yield is essentially like wherever you have this yield, that's going to replace each one of your view files, or it's going to, you can think of it in different ways. Each one of your view files is wrapped with all of this code, everything that's besides the yield. And wherever this yield is, that's where Rails puts one of your view files in. So if we have an index.html, so essentially it's going to take all of this code, and it's going to just like stick it in here where the yield is, right? Like that. But instead of like literally taking the code, because we're doing this for every single page, we have this keyword yield, which means like we're yielding to that particular view file that we want to look at that point in time. But everything else that we have inside of this file still remains. So if we have a nav bar, let's try this out. Oops, don't have. If we have a nav bar, that's gonna display, and I put some CSS in here already. That's gonna display on every single one of our pages because it is outside of this yield. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that helped. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So let's add some nav links in here. I'm just gonna grab some that I had already. So I'm just adding A tags here that send us to different pages. So like /games new, and then whatever they're called goes inside of those tags. And one other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some fonts. And that way, this will look even a little fancier. Cool. All right. So I think one other thing I need to do, I'm going to wrap this yield in a main because just mostly for styling reasons. Oops. This doesn't change, like anything I'm doing that doesn't change anything about the content itself. This is mostly just, for styling. So now we're able to kind of style our page a little bit, right? It looks a little nicer, and we are able to go to each one of our different pages that we don't have yet. We do have our home though, and we might want to edit our home as well, right? Because we don't want to show this like Rails homepage. But yeah, any questions here about this layout file that we're using, or any of the like CSS or anything like that?
Where does the CSRF meta tags come from? Like in those tags that are already in the header?
This comes with Rails. So This is all automatically. I mean, we created this new project, right? The only thing that I added was this nav bar. Everything else, the other setup, all comes with Rails.
But if I wanted to edit the meta tags on a page, is there
Like
a
on-
file set in the Rails app,
Like on one particular page?
or just on the site in general? Like if I wanted to edit what the CSRF meta tags represented.
I mean, you should be able to edit this. Like if you take this out and like write your own meta
The
tag
actual
somehow.
tags. Okay. So it's not like
You
that's
know?
drawing from some other file somewhere else in the application.
Well, I'm sure that this is like a method somewhere that actually, spits out the meta tags. But if you wanted to change those, I'm not sure that you can do this anywhere within the application. I think the best thing to do is just replace this with whatever meta tags you want.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So if we look at this one more time, if we look at the inspect our file here, we can see that we have this like div, right? We have this class of games, which is wrapping all of our games. And then we also have this head right here, which this is all coming from our layout file, right? All of this is only in the layout file. This is not in our actual index.html.erb. This nav bar is also in our layouts file. With every page that we have, it's going to use this like boilerplate code kind of, and then just replace this yield with the page that we want to look at. So let's create another page, and then we can take a look at how that happens on every single page. All right, let's see, what else do we have? Let's create a show page here. Someone help me through creating a show page.
So let's create a method for show in the controller.
Perfect.
And then we need to draw the game into an instance. So do @show.
Game.
Sorry, yeah, @game. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Equals
Yeah, no
game.find, and then params symbol ID.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
How come I'm able to find my game via this params :id? Where's that coming from?
It's coming from the route, the resources, because the RESTful route is going to be games/ID basically. So if I type in games/2, Rails is going to pass that in there. Yeah, see, it's missing a template.
Perfect. That's exactly right. So, so whenever we let's look at the routes one more time. We take a look at our routes. We can see that where is it? This is our show right here. Right? Can you all see that? So make this a little bigger. So our show for a single game, this goes to games and the show action, right? Our URL is going to be game/:id. So whatever is after the / after games is going to like represent our ID. So even if we type in games/hello, this hello keyword will be mapped to our ID key. So with this ID key, we're able to find a particular game. So if it's like games/2, we can use this dynamic part of our URL, whatever we name this here, by the way, which is by default just ID. We can use that dynamic part via our params hash. Like it automatically includes any dynamic part that we have in a URL. And we can grab this particular ID, like we almost like pull it out of a URL and help like find a game for us by pasting it into our game.find.
So for some reason you wanted the ID to be based on a name, then you would just do params : name.
So almost, we have to do a little bit more setup for that. So say we have something like a slug. Slug is like a common thing where you have, you know, if we have, let's go back to our games real quick. If we have this like Mario Kart, right? A slug might look like this.
Yeah.
Mario dash kart, right? It like kind of represents the game name or whatever you have. You can make this work by creating custom routes. But remember that Rails will create like very specific routes for you, and the part after /games is always going to be called ID. You can of course like use this like ID in order to find a game by its name, or you can create a custom route. Let's do this. We do /game/:slug, right? Send this to games show, right? We want to make sure that we put this above our resources, or we exclude our show page, something like that. So we're kind of like writing our own custom route here. And then whenever we get this dynamic part in our URL, we can say, instead of ID, we can say slug.
Cool. And on that routes table in the browser that you had, after each route, there was a : format in the parentheses.
Yeah. You're asking like what that's all about?
Correct,
I
yeah.
have no idea. I never looked into that. If someone can find that, maybe share it in our channel. Yeah, I don't know what that is, or if it's, I've never thought it was important or anything like that.
Okay.
Cool. So we wanted to build out our show. So we are like on a good track. We've already found our game. Let's change this back to ID. So now we can use this game variable in our view that we're going to create. Right. So let's go ahead and create a new view, show.html.erb. And let's give this game, let's just throw like a title up here so we can see what that looks like. So if we go to /games and then we click on one of the games, we can now see that this page is loading. Also notice that we still have our navigation bar, right? Again, this like layout will kind of wrap each one of our files. So on each one of our pages, we're going to see this nav bar now. So this seems to be working just great. Any questions here? Okay. All right, let's format this a little bit. I'm going to wrap an H1 around this, and I want to also add my image in here. Does someone remember how I would go about adding my image, like we did it on the index page?
Image.
So we need an image tag, right?
And then the source is going to be embedded Ruby tags. And then in this case, it'll be game.image URL.
Game.image URL. Perfect. Awesome. This will give us our image. Nice. Let's also add, what else do we have? Description, right? Let's put that down here at game.description. And that should be everything. Nice. Questions about anything that we've done here?
I mean, I can tell it's pulling the formatting from the CSS, which is really cool. Like it's already got CSS tags. Is that from the application.scss file? And it's basically just, or is that from games, because games.scss is applying to everything in the games views?
Yeah, so I believe even your CSS files that are like, that have a different name specific to your model will still be scoped to your entire application. What I've done here is I put some of my more general styles in this application.css, SCSS, and then the very like game specific styles into the games file.
I get exactly what you're talking about now. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, don't, again, this is all just styling. Like if we, if we were to comment all of this out and then like this as well, this is what our page would look like. It's still all the content there, but it looks a little different. So don't be like deterred by the styling here. That just a little cherry on top.
So to show the game description, you don't have to have it in like a div, or you don't have to have any tags behind it. You could just have the ERB for it. The game description.
So if we take a look at our code here in let's see, where is it? So right here, this is our game description, right? It isn't inside of a tag. We might want to put it inside of a tag. In this case, it doesn't matter a whole lot because it just kind of sits below the image. You can always just kind of put text in your HTML if you want to. Most of the time, you're probably going to have this in a tag. So maybe let's wrap this in like a P tag. That makes a lot of sense, I think. But yeah, good question.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
For the image, you hosted somewhere the image.
Say that one more time.
Where you hosted the image.
This is, let's go to the seeds real quick. These are just image URLs that I got on the internet. So they're really just pointing somewhere, that I grabbed, I found somewhere. Yeah, image hosting itself is a little tedious. I usually, just for demonstration purposes, just use like images that exist somewhere. It makes it a lot easier to, to get started. Good question.
Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions here before we continue?
So you had those URLs right there. How did you assign it, or how did you get it to just have .image URL for that to show up with those random links? Did you assign someone? Like how does it know which image? How does it know which image to grab?
Yeah, so each one of, this is my seeds file, right? This is where we are creating a new game.
Oh, you put it in there, okay.
Yeah, so I already created these seeds beforehand. We can also do this manually. We're gonna create some new games later once we have our new form. But like each one of our game instances has this image underscore URL attribute that points to a particular image. Yeah, great questions. Any other questions? All right, so in addition to my title, my image, my description, I feel like it would make sense to maybe have a button on this page that will allow me to edit this this game and or delete a game, maybe. Can someone help me create an edit button that will just kind of send me to my edit page for this game? Or link, button, link, doesn't matter.
Link to.
Yeah,
Link
I mean, you could use a button tag. Yeah, do a link to tag.
Link underscore
to edit.
Comma.
And then I think just edit path.
Edit path. Okay. Is that it?
And then
Did you pass in the params?
Add game.
Need to pass in my game, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you also? Never mind. Sorry. Never mind.
All right, let's refresh this and see what we get. What's this error telling us? We're super close.
The path is wrong. We need to do edit and game path. Yeah.
Exactly. Where can we go to like find this path, like what this is called exactly?
Rails
Big routes.
route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So either to like a page that you don't have, or we can go to Rails info routes. And then let's see if we can find this. So this is for our edit, right? So we can kind of go here on the right and try to find it, or we can look at our path, whichever one we want. And then here is our edit game path. This is the path that we're using here for this link. And yeah, and remember, whenever you have like a dynamic part in your URL, so like for the edit, right, this is going to a single game, or for the show page, that's also going to a single game. Whenever you have this like :ID, you need to pass in a game into your, or whatever you have an instance, into your path, right? So for the edit game path, we are passing in our add game. For the show page, which is our game path, we're also going to be passing in a single game. This is important, otherwise Rails wouldn't know like which page to go to, right? Which ID to use. All right, let's also put a class on this because I created a class called button, and then the whole thing will look like a button. Where do we want to go? Game/2. And now we have this edit button right here. If we click on it, we don't have an edit action in our controller yet, but that's fine. We are definitely being routed to the correct path. You can see that up here. Any questions here? Okay. All right, let's continue building out our application. And I'm going to jump back in here. I'm going to create my edit. And then I'll have to create another view right here, edit.html.erb. We're going to talk about kind of minimizing the code that we write for our edit and our new view, because they're going to be really similar. We're probably going to be talking about that on Monday. But for now, we might just be copying a little bit of code. Also, I'm going to create my new.html.erb. These are always the 4 views that you're going to have: edit, index, new, and show. You might have like a form partial, which again, we'll talk about later on. But these are like your main views: the edit, new, show, and index.
Is the form partial just like a template that you can use in the new and the edit? Pretty much.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly right. All right, let's create the rest of our actions here. Can you help me out? What are the other actions? We need 7 of them.
Do a show.
New,
Create, update, and delete or destroy.
Oh, do this.
destroy. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Awesome. What else are we gonna have to add into our controller in order to like create a new games and not have someone, you know, submit false data to our application? Strong params. They are usually sit under a private flag. And what are they called? What's the method?
Game params.
Game params. Very good. Does someone remember the syntax here?
Params dot require.
Require.
Parentheses column game. Dot permit, and then what do we have? Name. We need column before title and image URL.
Yep, image URL, and then I think we have a description.
Could we not do asterisk args in place of having to write each one out, just in case our table changed?
Like right here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that how they do it in the labs?
And one of them, yeah.
Okay.
I think talking about if you're eventually changing your database,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't need to change your code as much.
Yeah, I guess we could do that. Which I would say like whichever one you prefer, but that does make sense. Like if you keep adding new attributes, that would probably make sense.
Okay.
But in the end, it gets you to the same result. So.
Right.
All right. We have all of our 7 restaurant routes. We have our strong params. First of all, let's see if this edit page now shows. Awesome. We don't have anything on here, but it looks like we are good to go. All right, let's start. What do we want to do next? We still need a new page. We still need the edit page, and we need to make our create, update, and destroy work. I guess let's start with a new, like creating a new game, right? What do I need inside of my new action in order to create a new game, be able to create a new game?
Need to be able to create a new
equals game.new.
At game equals game.new. And why do I need this here?
So that you can refer to it in the form 4.
Exactly, for my form 4 or form with whatever you're using. I think we did form 4 yesterday, right? Let's do a form with. It's really, really similar. I think in the labs you generally learn form 4 and form tag. The differences there are that form 4 you would use to build a form around a model. So if you have a game instance, you would use a form 4 to build the form around that game instance, so that you can create your input fields for the title, description, and so on. Form tag is a little bit more flexible, I want to say. Form tag is usually for something like a search input. So if you have a search on your page, that is also a form, but you're not building this form around any particular one of your instances in your application.
So for the form tag would be for like navigating within the site itself, like say I wanted to go to another page, or
form tag would be for any kind of input field that isn't directly related to an instance within your application. So like a search form or
contact us form.
A perfect contact form.
I guess I'm a little confused about the search form, like what that means.
I mean, it's just like if you have any kind of input field with a submit button on your page anywhere in your application, and this input field, like you're trying to you maybe are trying to create something, maybe you're trying to like find something in the terms of like a search form, then you still need a form. You still need to build a form, right? So we could hypothetically just build out our form manually, or we could use something like form tag. And this again is like, we have to wrap this in our ERB tags, but we can use form tag to kind of build our custom form. Because remember form 4, when we built that, we have to build this around a particular, in our case, game instance. The form tag is not built around anything else, any like game instance or any instance of anything. It's like kind of standalone, just for if you want to create a form somewhere. Like a search form doesn't have anything to do with any particular like game instance, but it just takes an input and then hopefully, sends back like a list of found items or something. Can someone think of another use case for form tag that isn't related to like creating a new instance of something?
Like a search form?
Yeah. So search form. Let's see, what else?
Email us. Well, it's because that goes back to a contact form.
Yeah. So no, that's a great example though. Like a newsletter sign up, right? Newsletter sign up. You put in your email, and maybe you I don't know. Maybe you create like a new user. So then at that point it would again be like more of a form 4. But if you're just doing something with those email address, like forwarding them or something. Can't think of another good example, but yeah, anything that's not directly related to an instance of something. And so that's the difference between form 4 and form tag. Form with, which is a little bit newer, it kind of encapsulates both of those, right? So you have form 4 and form tag kind of in one. Form with gives you the ability to do just the same stuff that you would with form 4 and form tag, just with one form builder.
So this would be the one you would ideally use all the time then?
So I don't think that we teach like form with in the labs. It's kind of up to you. I think form 4 and form tag may be softly deprecated. So it means that like in future versions of Rails, it may become a problem using form 4 and form tag. So in that case, if you're comfortable using form with, I guess I would recommend using that instead of the other two. So you can use that with anything pretty much. The syntax here is a little bit different. I believe with form with, we have to specify like what our model is. Other than that, it's pretty much just like form 4. And again, look at the documentation to get the syntax just right. No one is expected to remember the syntax for everything. Even if you're like even if you've been a developer for 10, 20 years, you're not going to remember the syntax for everything. Don't be afraid to look this stuff up. So let's find our form with like a model. Oh, there was one. So this one right here is built around an instance of an article. And this is the syntax essentially that we're using. We're specifying the model at game. And then also they added another class here, which we could hypothetically do if we wanted to. Yeah. And then let's just copy this for our text fields. And then we'll just kind of use, so we have a text field for title that's already correct. And then I actually do want a text area for my description, because the description might be a little bit longer, and I'll show you what that looks like as well. And then I want to make sure that each one of these has a label, just so that people can easily identify what they're filling out. All right, let's do the same thing for image URL. And let's take a look. If we go to new game. Oh, I have mixed this up, sorry. Label. I get that right now? Okay, cool. Again, some styling from my CSS file here, but the one difference here that that you can see maybe is that this is a normal input field as well as this. And then this is a text area. So you are able to like expand this, so that you can like write more code, like write more text in this particular field. Any questions here about the way that we built our form?
The styling that you have here, obviously with the super long, that's all done with CSS.
Yeah. I just set the width of each one of these to 100%, so they take up the entire screen. And I do have I have a max width on this on the parent container, so it will only ever be like 900 pixels wide or something like that. And then you can make it smaller, so this is like responsive, but it won't get too big either. Cool. Any other questions about this form here that we built? It's the important thing to
do it with a
understand.
model, then it would just be probably without parts of line 3.
Yeah, so if we don't build it on top of a model, it might look something like, let's go up here. So this is like basic, there's nothing really in there, but form width here. This is like an example without a model, where you specify, and this, again, they're using a search example. It's a very common example to use. So form width, they're specifying the URL. They're essentially specifying like where this is supposed to go, the method, and then within our form, we just have our input fields. We have label tag. I don't even know really what that is. Let's see what that looks like. Cool. So we have the search for, I guess label tag is different from label. I'm not sure in what way exactly, but yeah. So, and then we have our submit as well. And then when you hit enter, if we actually inspect this, we can see that our form is being created. Our action is /search. So if we had an endpoint that was called /search, we could add that in our routes, like get /search to you know, whatever we have. Maybe we'd have a different controller for this, but if we made it games, we send them to like a search action. And then we can also notice that the method is get here. Where's the method get? I feel like this should be more like a post. Interesting. Yeah, I would make this a post because we are posting something. It depends, I guess, on how your search works. And then this would be a post. And then you can receive that like search query in your controller, and you can, you know, show the user like a list of found items. All right, let me comment this out.
Would a post be searching the database and a get be searching something not in a database? That explain the difference while they're using the get versus a post?
So it really kind of depends on what you do in your controller. The thing is that if you're trying to send information to your controller, this should generally be like a post request, right? You're trying to send like a search query, and then based on that, I think they might be using like you might use some like JavaScript to do like a instant search kind of. That way you don't have to refresh the page. But again, I think this would go a little bit too much into detail here with what we're doing.
Yeah, sure.
Feel free to like try this out and mess around with it a little bit. Okay. All right, let's, we have like 2 more minutes until I have to go. So let's really quickly finish up our controller to create a new game. So which action do I go to once I hit the submit button here?
Create.
Create, exactly.
Action.
And this, again, if we look at our form, this is all specified in our form, right? So our action here, our URL is games, our method is post, because inside of our routes, we have, for this resources, our method of post and our action of /games will take us to our create action in our controller. So we're going to end up here. And can someone help me create a new game here?
Copy
At
line
game
7.
That game.
equals game.new.
Mm-hmm.
And then game params.
Yeah, pass in the game params here.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you could do like the if at game.save return the, the success action, redirect to the show page, and then if not, render the new page.
Redirect to the show
path.
page. How do I? So game path.
And then pass in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then else render new game path. And then
so we want
do
to
like render new. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, one other thing you can do here, just kind of shorten it. Again, same with the link to, is you can just pass in the game.
So cool.
I feel like game path maybe a little bit more explicit, but you could hypothetically just pass in the game. Rails knows what to do with that. All right, let's create a new game real quick.
Why that works?
Like to just pass in the new game?
Yeah, just pass in the instance.
Because of syntactic sugar, because Rails just made it easier for you, tried to make it easier for you to use the redirect to. This is, so everything, most of these things that whenever you're able to shorten something, would be called syntactic sugar. You can do it the longer way, but a lot of frameworks and languages will add this syntactic sugar on top to
that's crazy.
Yeah, to reduce the amount that you have to write and think, I guess.
Oh, that's so cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we created a new game now. This seems to be working just fine. And if we go to all of our games, we have this new game. Obviously, we don't have an image, but that was successful. Awesome. Any questions before we close this? We'll continue at 11.
Thank you for this. This is great.
Cool. All right, let me stop recording real quick.